Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into something really significant, the recent India-Pakistan standoff. We're
hmm
focusing specifically on what some are calling Operation Sindoor, and our main source here is a detailed analysis from The Hindu.
Right.
Now, for anyone tracking current affairs, and maybe especially if you're preparing for the UPSC exams, you should see this as, well, more than just a regional flashpoint.
Absolutely. It's a really potent example of how warfare itself is changing right now
Yeah,
in the 21st century.
exactly. So what stands out?
Well, it's the move away from purely traditional military fights.
Mm.
This situation really underlines how critical technology is becoming.
Like drones.
Drones are huge, yes. But also the whole information space, how that's used, and some quite subtle but important changes in strategic thinking.
Okay, so understanding this is pretty key for grasping modern geopolitics, wouldn't you say?
I'd say so, yeah.
So, for this deep dive, we've gone through that Hindu analysis pretty carefully. Our mission, really, is simple. Pull out the key insights. How does Operation Sindoor show us the new face of warfare?
Okay.
Where should we start?
I guess the technology angle is unavoidable. Drone warfare seems like the obvious place.
Yeah, let's start there. The analysis makes it really clear. Drones were a defining part of this standoff. It's a major tech disruption we're seeing everywhere, frankly.
How so? What makes them so different?
Well, they offer what's called asymmetric capability,
Hey.
meaning a, let's say, less conventionally powerful actor can still achieve significant effects. You don't necessarily need fleets of expensive, high-risk manned fighter jets to make an impact anymore.
Right. And I do recall reports, Prime Minister Modi talking about increased UAV deployment.
He did, and the scale mentioned in the analysis is, well, it's quite something.
How big are we talking?
India apparently intercepted somewhere between 300 and 400 Turkish-made Songar drones.
300 to 400. Wow.
And get this, across 36 different locations. 36. Okay, that paints a picture of just how widespread Pakistan's drone activity was.
Exactly. It wasn't just a few isolated incidents. It was a sustained, large-scale effort.
So, faced with that, what was India's counter? How did they respond?
India's response, according to the analysis, is really telling. They brought in Sky Striker kamikaze drones.
Kamikaze drones, so loitering munitions.
Precisely. And what's key here is how they were used. Real-time intelligence feeding directly into very precise targeting.
And the advantage there is?
Minimal risk to your own personnel.
Yeah.
You're not sending pilots into contested airspace for every single target. It signals this shift towards, well, what some call probabilistic combat.
Probabilistic. Explain that a bit.
Lower cost per unit, maybe, compared to a fighter jet sortie. But you can deploy them more persistently, adaptively. It's about achieving effects through sustained pressure and smart targeting, even if individual units are less powerful than traditional assets. High impact potential still.
Okay, so it's less about single decisive dogfights and more about saturation, adaptability, using remote systems effectively. The whole dynamic of air warfare is changing.
That's it, exactly. It's becoming more networked, more about system versus system, and being able to adapt almost instantly to threats, projecting power remotely.
Got it. Drones, a clear game changer. Now, the analysis also talked about India's air defense side of things. It wasn't just about shooting down drones one by one, was it? Sounds more layered.
Oh, definitely. India's air defense during this operation, it really shows a kind of evolving strategic philosophy. The big ideas are integration and self-reliance,
Integration meaning?
bringing different systems, different capabilities together so they work as one coordinated shield. And self-reliance, well, that's about developing and deploying your own indigenous tech as much as possible.
Reducing dependency.
Exactly. And it wasn't just one type of defense, it was multi-layered.
Right. The Hindu piece mentions specific systems, Akash, QRSAM.
Akash, the Quick Reaction Surface-to-Air Missile, or QRSAM, obviously the S-400 systems, and Barak 8 as well.
A mix of indigenous and imported systems.
Yes, each designed for different threats, different altitudes, different ranges. That's the layered part. But the really interesting bit, highlighted in the analysis, is the Akash tier system.
Akash tier. What does that do?
Think of it as the digital brain, almost. It fuses the data coming in from all the different radars, from the Akash batteries, the S-400, everything.
Okay.
Puts it all together into one coherent picture of the airspace in real time.
So faster, better decisions.
Much faster, much better informed decisions. It's moving towards these smart, adaptive defense networks. Less siloed, more integrated.
And this seems to fit into that bigger picture you mentioned, the global push for, like, technological independence and defense.
Absolutely. It's a clear trend. A nation's ability to innovate and produce its own defense tech is increasingly tied to its overall military clout and, importantly, its strategic autonomy.
Right. You're not reliant on others for critical capabilities or spares.
Precisely. Plus, it can boost your own defense industry, even lead to exports down the line. So India's investments in homegrown platforms, things like Project Kusha for long-range air defense, they really show this commitment. It's about standing on your own feet, strategically.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The analysis also brought up something less tangible, maybe? Information warfare.
Ah, yes. Hugely important, even if it's harder to see directly.
It's not about kinetic attacks, right? It's operating in a different domain.
Entirely. The analysis points out how Pakistan used digital platforms for, well, psychological operations, PsyOps, trying to manage perceptions, shape the narrative.
So influencing how people think, both domestically and internationally, creating doubt.
Exactly. And it's not just, crude propaganda anymore. We're talking sophisticated stuff. Large-scale ops, using doctored videos, manipulated social media campaigns, pushing narratives designed to create strategic ambiguity or sow confusion.
The analysis drew parallels, didn't it, to other conflicts?
It did. Mention the Israel-Palestine conflict, Russia-Ukraine, places where control of the information space, the narrative, is clearly a central part of the conflict strategy.
It's become a key battleground in its own right.
Absolutely. Winning the information war can be as vital as winning on the physical battlefield, sometimes maybe even more so, depending on the goals.
So what does countering that require? For India, for instance.
It's multifaceted. You need the tech infrastructure, sure, to detect and debunk fake news or coordinated campaigns. But you also need a resilient media environment, media literacy among the population, and critically strong, clear, credible communication from official institutions to counter the misinformation.
Right, building trust is key there.
Yeah.
Okay, this brings us to another strategic concept, deterrence. The analysis suggested India's response was very carefully managed, not just all-out escalation.
Yes, that's a really crucial takeaway. It seems India pursued a strategy of calibrated deterrence.
Meaning they wanted to send a strong signal without starting a full-scale war.
Exactly. Signal resolve, demonstrate capability, but keep the escalation ladder in mind. It's moving away from that old binary thinking. Either total peace or total war. There's this gray zone in between.
Strategic ambiguity, perhaps.
You could call it that, a way to show strength and impose costs, but carefully, without triggering an uncontrollable spiral.
And Prime Minister Modi's May 12th speech, where he talked about the new normal in New Age warfare. That seems relevant here.
Very relevant. It really captures this shift. The analysis breaks it down into maybe 3 key doctrinal shifts India seems to be making.
Okay, what are they?
First, developing the ability to respond swiftly and proportionally, not necessarily massively, but appropriately to the provocation.
Right.
Second, really integrating these layered offensive and defensive systems, the drones we talked about, the air defenses, both homegrown and imported into one cohesive operational structure.
Okay. And third?
A more refined strategy for escalation control, knowing how far to push, when to hold back, how to signal intentions clearly. It's about managing the conflict dynamics proactively.
So, taken together, it suggests a move towards a more proactive, tech-enabled warfighting doctrine, less purely defensive.
I think that's a fair assessment, yeah. More dynamic, certainly.
Finally, the analysis really stressed the coordination aspect between the different branches of the Indian military.
Yes, and this shouldn't be underestimated.
Yeah.
Operation Sindoor apparently saw an unprecedented level of jointness. Army, Navy, Air Force working together seamlessly.
Not just operating in their own silos.
Exactly. The Integrated Air Command and Control System, IACCS, was mentioned as the operational backbone here.
The system linking everything together.
Yeah, enabling synchronized, real-time joint operations. Imagine the coordination needed to manage air assets, ground movements, naval positioning, all informed by shared intelligence picture.
So it wasn't just theory, it was put into practice effectively.
The analysis suggests it was a significant operational achievement, yeah, underpinned by good intelligence sharing between the different agencies, too.
And that level of synergy, what does it tell us?
It shows the growing maturity of India's strategic architecture, I think. And it really highlights how vital interoperability is in modern conflict. Your different forces have to be able to work together seamlessly.
But the analysis also raised a note of caution, didn't it, about new challenges?
It did. The thing is, technologies like drones, cyber tools, they're becoming cheaper, more accessible, not just for states, but potentially non-state actors too.
So adversaries like Pakistan could develop ways to counter India's strengths, even with less sophisticated means. Asymmetric responses again.
That's the risk. It means India, like any major power, needs to be constantly adapting, constantly evolving its military planning, its intelligence gathering, its cybersecurity. It's a continuous cycle.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, Operation Sindoor, based on this analysis, it really feels like a case study in 21st century conflict.
I think it is. It shows that victory, or even just effective defense, isn't just about territory or sheer numbers anymore.
It's about mastering.
Technology, definitely.
Yeah.
But also the information domain and psychological resilience, being able to withstand pressure, both physical and informational.
The battlefield is truly multidimensional now. Drones, disinformation, doctrine, they're all interconnected and redefining conflict.
Absolutely. And for India, the path forward, according to this analysis, seems clear. Keep pushing technological innovation, especially indigenous development. Keep strengthening that jointness, that institutional synergy, and maintain strategic foresight, anticipate the next changes.
So the big lesson from Operation Sindoor isn't just about this specific standoff.
No, it's that modern preparedness means much more than just hardware. It demands adaptability, credibility, making sure your capabilities are believable, and crucially, being able to manage and control the narratives of conflict.
Right. So just to recap our deep dive, drawing from the Hindus' analysis of Operation Sindoor, we've seen how drones are changing aerial warfare, how layered integrated defense is key, the rising importance of information as a weapon, and shifts towards more calibrated deterrence and joint operations.
Which leads us to a really important thought, something for you, our listener, to consider, especially if you're tracking these things closely, perhaps for UPSC or just to understand the world.
Go on.
Given how interconnected all these domains now are, tech, info, strategy, cyber, what are the real long-term consequences for national security planning, for international relations? How does this constant evolution change the game for everyone?
That's a big question. Definitely something to mull over.
Indeed.
Okay, well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. If you found this discussion useful, please do give us a like, subscribe for more, and definitely leave a comment if you have questions or your own insights. We do read them.
We do.
And just to reiterate, our analysis today was primarily based on reporting and analysis published in The Hindu. Thanks for joining us.